Hello, YouTubers. Joe here on Sunday, September 1st, 2013, on about 3:15 or so Eastern Time. I could have done this just on the webcam from the computer. I could have done this on my tabletop tripod here using the Canon 320 ELPH HS or the ELPH 320 HS, Canon. But since I had spent a moderate amount of time, well, not a moderate amount of time, some time talking with a fellow at church today about the iPole Stealth, because he'd asked me how I do my videos, and so we talked about that. And as you know, I've reviewed the iPole Stealth. For those of you who watch my videos assiduously, and I sent him the link when I got home from church. So I thought I'd use the iPole Stealth as kind of a bit of reinforcement. My word, if I can get into doing YouTube videos at age 61, given my general attitude toward this kind of computer stuff before I got one, heck, maybe he can too. Who knows? But to get down to the nitty-gritty of today's topic, we had a very sobering moment in church today. A reminder of the fact that no one knows the hour or the time. And this fellow who had some sort of cerebrovascular event a few weeks back. Then he had some vascular complications from his arteriography site. Well, he was sitting there. Now his wife wasn't with him today. She's got a lot of irons in the fire. She does a lot of theater work and teaching work. I guess she's kind of been sick herself here the last week or so, but she showed up for the two funerals that we had. But I mean, you do that, you make an effort, don't you? And so she has a tremendous soprano voice. The organ kind of bothers her. She sits up there and the choir loft, the organ bothers her. She has to sort of sit off to the side, so she's in that area where the sound waves sort of cancel each other out, so she doesn't get this ringing in her ears. Well, in any case, she wasn't there with him today, and so he just topped. This was right at the end of the sermon. The sermon had nothing to do with this man losing consciousness. It was a great sermon. If anything, it would have tended to perk him up, keep him alert. Our deacon did it. She did a great job. Wonderful sermon. Actually referenced all three scripture passages. Good job. Excellent. As you know, I like scriptural preaching. So this guy loses consciousness and falls over sideways. Now it seems that there was a small child sitting next to him. Well, there's a story behind the small child, but I won't go into that today. But in any case, so this kid's about maybe, she's probably 4.5, 5. I mean, old enough to, have a certain amount of experience of the world. And so this 73-year-old guy falls falls over on her. And so she sort of runs scampering up the side aisle back to where some of the other younger kids stay with a couple of minders. And you know, she wasn't screaming or anything, but she was clearly not in the best of spirits. And well, then, you know, then there was sort of this cluster of folks over some. So I mean, I kind of, you know, I was standing up getting ready to do the Nicene Creed, and I looked over there, and this, you know, clearly where he was no more. So I'm thinking, oh, you know, so I don't mosey them. Actually, I kind of try to make a moderate amount of haste, you know, obeying the rule that one never runs to a code. And because when you get there, if you run, you aren't worth anything because you're out of breath and you can't think straight. In any case, by the time I got there, he was awake. He was fairly lucid too. He was talking. He was gripping things. I mean, so, you know, they had laid him out flat. Well, not flat, but they were elevating his feet and having him lay out flat. And you know, he had like 4 or 5 nurses around him, and there were like 2 or 3 other nurses in the congregation. And you know, one woman in particular was greatly talking to him and comforting him, and Charles zipped back, and I got there and helped holding his legs up, and I got hold of his wrist, and I could see his neck. I could see I could see the one carotid pulse that's still functional, you know, pulsing in his neck. And yeah, and so it was strong and regular and no overt arrhythmias, although you can't really tell the site of the electrical impulse in the myocardium from just the pulse. But, you know, I mean, you can also tell if there's any irregularity, and you get a sense of, well, you just get a sense. I mean, you get a sense. I mean, anybody who's done this for a living gets a sense of these things. One thing I noticed right off the bat was, without overtly noticing it, because so much of this is just, you know, you interiorize all this stuff when you do this, is that he wasn't having any back wave venous stuff. So that means he was actually having some sort of sinus rhythm. He wasn't getting retrograde, you know, atrial, you know, discordant atrial contraction. So he was, you know, I don't, you know, I could say, yeah, there's an oddball chance he had an idioventricular, very slow V-tach. In this case, V-tach, tach being a misnomer, but no, I think he just. Now, why did he lose consciousness? You know, hypoglycemia, an arrhythmia that had gone away by the time, you know, people, you know, that reverted, and he woke up. He was profoundly sweating, and he looked gray. So, I mean, something, you know, he clearly had a substantial hypotensive episode that caused him to pass out. Well, somebody called the squad. You know, the squad was called, and they came and, you know, fairly lickety-split, as the squads do here pretty much in Delaware County, all over the place. And this was Delaware City squad, I think. But, you know. So I said, the general Delaware County phenomenon is you call a squad, it's there within, you know, 3 to 5 minutes max. That I don't mind paying taxes for, by the way. And you know, they came in and they hooked him up with the various devices, and his pressure was normal, his pulse was, you know, mid-70s, regular. They got the pulse oximeters oxygenating. He was breathing easily throughout all this. I mean, he wasn't like he was gasping, you know, heaving and gasping. He wasn't doing any of this breathing. You know, despite the fact he looked very gray. And he was, you know, sweat was pouring off. Although the sweat wasn't pouring off him anymore, but, you know, obviously the sweat that was there was still beaded up. Because of the logistics in getting this guy out of the pew and out the front steps, they sort of asked him if they actually sent 2 squads. Interesting. Well, they sent a squad and a fire truck, as they do, and all these guys are paramedics. Now these four guys could have carried him out easily if they had to, but I'm sure they all have protocols to follow, and so he was actually able to help in his transfer onto the cart, and, which was in this very narrow side aisle, and he was talking. Now I noticed when he got up finally onto the cart after the transfer and was talking that one side of his face had started to maybe not work quite as well as the other side. The underlying problem, this guy's underlying problem is known. He has complete occlusion of the right internal carotid artery, and that's not a, and it clearly was long-term occlusion. So this wasn't, when he had the problem a few weeks back, it wasn't an acute occlusion. I mean, it sort of presented like it might have been an acute occlusion, but it wasn't. And this is not amenable to easy revascularization. But clearly there's a watershed in his brain somewhere that from time to time isn't perfusing well enough to maintain consciousness. So this may be an ongoing saga. Maybe they can define it. Maybe they can do something about it. Anyway, he got carted off to the pest house, and presumably appropriate things will be done for and to this man. We shall see. We can only pray for him and his wife, who's got to go through this with him, obviously. As the nurse that was closest to him said to me afterwards, of course she'd been to these previous funerals here the last 3 or 4 days. She says, "Oh dear Lord, not another death here, and then one in the church, to boot." So thanks be to God, he woke up and was talking. So the service progressed. I guess we pretty much skipped the Nicene Creed, and this fellow that I talked with did the prayers of the people, and I went up and helped with communion. Since Charles decided to go to the hospital, but we have clergy in reserve. We got clergy out the yin yang up here, which is good. That's great. So there it is. We're sort of waiting for word, and on that note, I guess I'm going to sort of shut up here. Paul's in doing YouTube stuff. I'm thinking about maybe doing some new potatoes. Somebody gave him a mess of new potatoes at work on Friday, and we did some of those last night. I'm going to do the rest of them today. In fact, I stopped and got an extra jug of country crock on the way to church this morning for that. So I'm very much looking forward to dressing those things up, spiffing those guys up, and eating them tonight. So, bye-bye, YouTubers.